Joining us now is Professor Tayao, President and CEO of the Political Economic Elemental Researchers and Strategists, or peers. Prof, thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, Prof, let's start off with the issue of, former ES Lucas Bersamin's claim na hindi daw siya tinanggal at Malacanang claims that he was removed. What do you think is happening here?
Hindi siya nag-file ng resignation.
Alam ko, anyone in the cabinet serves, sabi nga nila, no, quote-unquote, at the pleasure of the president. So, to my mind, the significance of which is the same, no? Whether you resigned or you were asked to resign or tinanggal, doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, the position really depends mainly on the trust and confidence of the president. So, I'm inclined to think that given the statement of the former executive secretary, he acknowledges this, and even in the supposed kasi sabi niya hindi siya nag-resign, so I'm using the phrase supposed resignation letter. The first line says the first line acknowledges, no, that the appointing power really has the prerogative, no, to choose who will serve in the first as the first official family of the president. So yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters significantly is the question whether it has something to do with the controversy
Right.
that is being heard now.
Why would then Malacanang come out and say that he resigned rather than just say, we removed him? Is this a matter of optics given Saldico's statements?
Pwedeng optics, no, or pwedeng yun naman talaga ang kanilang pagtingin diyan, no, kasi katulad nga, no, I've seen a number of those who underwent or experienced the same process, no. Kasi kahit naman nag-resign ka pero binigyan ka na ng thank you letter, ibig sabihin binigyan ka na ng signal to resign. So paano mo i-interpret 'yon? Nag-resign ka o tinanggal ka? But just the same, the effect is equivalent.
Yeah.
No? So you're no longer in the position. So to my mind, it could be optics because at the end of the day, this is political, whether we like it or not.
Okay, so what do you say about nga paano po itong ginawa nila kay former ES Lucas Bersamin and also Budget Secretary Amina Pangandaman na they were removed or they resigned in the position because of yung natag yung pangalan nila doon nga sa statement na may kinalaman sila sa mga budget scheme. And kasama rin yung grand nephew, diba, ni ES Bersamin. What do you say about yung issue ng nepotism and the way they was let go? And do you believe na meron silang hand dito sa nangyari sa budget scheme na to?
Maraming marami ang tanong mo, no? So isa-isa. Una yung nepotism. Yung nepotism hindi mo maiaalis yan sa klase ng gobyerno natin at sa klase ng politika natin, no? Paulit-ulit kong sinasabi na ang problema wala sa personalidad. Kaya lalo na kapag ka nagpo-post ako at binabanatan ako ng mga DDS, nilalagyan ko na lang ng smiley kasi natatawa na ako no? Kasi ang babaw kasi ng mga banat. Hindi nila maintindihan na ang issue ng korupsyon hindi kayang i-explain ng isang personalidad at hindi din kayang solusyonan ng isang personalidad. No, kaya ko sinasabi ito kasi yung question mo ng nepotism dahil nga limitado yung klase ng politika natin sa mga personalidad kaya tinatagalog ko na baka hindi pa ako maintindihan no, talagang kukuha ka ng tao na malapit sa iyo.
Correct.
Kasi wala kang mekanismo We have no real political parties and even the civil service, no, pasensya na pero pasintabi sa mga profesional na naninilbihan sa gobyerno pero ang katotohanan niyan, bago ka makapasok, siyempre kailangan alam mo kung merong bakanting pwesto. So, merong tutulong sa iyo para makapasok dyan. Now, it's more a question of performance more than whether or not one is related to another. Because again, if I may emphasize, talagang personalan ang ang tawag dito sistema, no, for lack of a better term, na meron tayo sa gobyerno. Ngayon, may kinalaman ba sila o wala? Babalikan natin ulit yung sistema kasi hindi pa kaya minsan natatawa na lang ako. Ngayon naiinis na rin ako doon sa pinipilit nitong mga DDS na wala pa daw napapakulong. Alam mo, kahit na saang sulok ka ng mundo magpunta, kapag meron kang kinasuhan, unang-una iimbestigahan mo muna yan. You will be in other words, it takes time before it actually happens. And how much time have passed already since the bombshell from the president himself that there are these scandalous transactions? No? So, ini-expect mo kagad may makukulong. Hindi naman katulad nung nakaraang administrasyon yan na pagka ikaw pinagsuspetsahan, hindi ka na nga kakasuhan no? Alam mo na, itutumba ka na lang. Ganun ang hindi pwedeng ganun no? But I'm still inclined to think, and this was even acknowledged by Baguio City Mayor Magalong himself, no, who enjoys at least some confidence as far as the public is concerned, na siya mismo tinanong, maayos ba yung proseso ng ICI? Tinanong din siya, bakit hindi tinetelevised ng ICI? In-explain niyang mabuti ito na maayos ba ang proseso ng ICI and so on and so on. So my point is, we have to allow the whole process to actually happen and find out kung ang resulta nito katulad nung Napoles dati at saka yan yung pinakamatindi tong Parmali. Isang lang yung naikulong mo, no? At parang ang pinalalabas mo, Yusek lang ang kayang gumawa ng lahat nung nangyari. No, kung ganun pa din ang magiging resulta, talagang pilitin na nating mag-resign to lahat, hindi isa lang. Kasi kapag pumalit yung isa, hindi tayo nakakasiguro. So malaking kinalaman ito doon sa pag-resign nila DBM Secretary at ES Bersamin, not so much because they're involved, but because even before a formal investigation can be started, ginudge na sila kagad ng mga tao ng mga DDS. Hindi ba ganyan din ang nangyari kay Speaker Martin Romualdez? Hindi ko sinasabing wala siyang kinalaman dito, pero hindi ba't yung title na tambaloslos, bago pa pumutok lahat itong issue na ito, pinalabas na nila. So ganun sila kagaling no, yung sirain ang imahe ng isang tao at gumawa ng istorya. Yan ang problema, kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng hatian. But again, if I may emphasize, siguro maswerte tayo kung meron tayong makikita isa, dalawa na politiko na talagang masasabi nating malinis. Because again, given the kind of politics and governance that we have, we really cannot excuse or free anyone from blame, either because of omission or commission. So, yun lang ang aking explanation dyan. Wala nang iba.
So would you say then, marami nagsasabi, good move daw yung ginawa ni Ombudsman Remulla with the kinds of cases he filed to ensure na may possibly a high rate of success kaysa yung pipilitin daw niya yung big amount, I think that was plunder, na may pag-asa na baka daw matagal, ma-delay, ma-dismiss due to technicalities. So would you say na maganda yung direction niya na he will file cases, for example kay Saldico, per case, per corruption issue daw, hindi niya as a whole?
I think he's in a far better position to determine that, and I will, of course, defer to him. He's not just an ombudsman. He's not just a former DOJ secretary. He's not just a lawyer, but his experience really is very much into prosecution. So, and kahit yung mga kilala ko mga abogado na talagang may experience pagdating sa pagtatry ng mga kaso, yan din ang nadidinig ko. So, I suppose it's a well-advised move on the part of the ombudsman.
Well, yung nangyari pong speech ng kapatid ni si Senator Amy Marcos, and of course, we all know sister ng ating Pangulo during the peace rally of INC has become headlines of international news yesterday. What do you think is going to be the effect on this on our country? Politically, economically,
oo.
Alam mo, two takeaways, Angela, no? One, you mentioned about the speech. I don't know whether we can even call that a speech, no?
A rant?
And sabihin na natin na totoo yung nagsasabi ni Senator Amy. It leaves a bad taste in the mouth, so to speak. Sabi nga ni Senator Ping Lacson, hindi Filipino yung ganitong paraan eh. Kasi kung merong problema, no, lalong-lalo na sa magkapatid, at yun ang nakakalungkot dito, magkapatid ito. Hindi ba ninyo pwedeng pag-usapan yan? No, meron pang mga babalikan ko yung didi. Tonto ako dito sa mga to, akala nila nabibwisit nila ako eh. Baka sila nabibwisit sa akin, no? So, ang sinasabi ko lang, no, sabi nila magkapatid daw, so kailangan daw paniwalaan natin. Sabi ko, ako matanda na ako, kaming magkakapatid, magkakasama kami nung kami mga bata, and therefore we actually know what's going on in our individual lives. Pero eventually, pag nagkatrabaho ka, nagkaroon ka ng sarili mong pamilya, eventually, hindi mo na alam talaga kung ano nangyayari, no? And let me just put was this an end to and I hope it can put an end. Alam mo, script talaga yung sinusunod ng mga DDS eh. Umpisa pa lang, pinaparatangan na nila ang Pangulo na gumagamit ng droga. Hindi resonate, hindi pinapansin. So, kumambyo sila, corruption yung hinanap nilang issue. Sinakyan nila itong issue ng corruption. No? Hindi pa din nag-stick. No? Actually, kung hindi pa nag-bombshell ang presidente nung SONA, hindi naman magdidikit yung corruption eh. Pero sila nagsimula nung akusasyon ng corruption, nag-backfire sa kanila. No? Kasi for obvious reasons, lalo na nung iniimbestigahan nito mga corruption na to, much of what transpired have been traced in the previous administration. So, pagka sinasabi nilang marumi itong gobyernong to at malinis yung nakaraang gobyerno, parang hindi ka ba nanginginig dyan sa pinagsasabi mo? So, hindi nag-work yung corruption, bumalik sila ngayon sa droga na hindi na nila natandaan na matagal na itong issue ng droga na ito. Huling-huli, kung talagang nagdodroga ang Pangulo, makikita mo naman sa pananalita ng Pangulo. Makikita mo sa galaw ng Pangulo. I don't know, but I've seen so many people who are actually drug addicts, so to speak. And you can very well say in the physical appearance of the person who's a user, who's an addict, and even in the behavior, take note yung health ng isang tao. Kung sa edad ng Pangulo at gumagana pa ng maayos yung mga pyesa niya, ibig sabihin there's nothing wrong with him. Now, you mentioned another thing, foreign impact. I don't think it will have any foreign impact. Albeit that I will hazard to say na merong foreign interest dito. Kasi lagi ko nang ini-explain yan, and our firm has been really monitoring this, no? This is vintage playbook as far as with this modern warfare is concerned. Hindi naman putukan ng gera ngayon eh. Nagsisimula yan sa disinformation, no? At matagal na namin sinasabi to. It's a good thing that this time siguro hindi na maiiwasan tingnan ng mga otoridad na tingnan talaga itong foreign interference na ito, because whether we like it or not, it's already glaring. Saan ka nakakita mga aircon pa ng mga tent, no? Tapos talagang fleet of buses, no, coming from different areas, no, to orchestrate this kind of rally. And I will even specify it already. This is very much a playbook of our good friend China, no, which is also used in other countries, and we have already reports to verify this playbook, so to speak.
So,
But for context and for our viewers, you're talking about yung rally sa EDSA done by the UPI, na ngayon merong issue po sa kanila na foreign funded yung kanilang naging rally doon, which is right now dininay naman po ni General Pokis. You're talking about that, right?
Yeah, you could say that is one of those possible possible activities and organizations funded by foreign entities, no, by China, to be more specific. Pero alam mo, more than the rallies, no, nagsisimula nga yan sa disinformation eh, no. Actually dapat tingnan ng gobyerno yung mga pages na nagpapakalat ng napakaraming fake news, no? Hindi naman nito lang nagsimula yan eh, no? So hindi lang ngayon lang nagsimula yan, Angelo, no? Matagal na.
Right.
Bago pa mag-eleksyon, grabe na, no? Yung mga nagpapalabas ng grabe ang gulo sa Pilipinas, yun yung una nilang playbook eh.
Yes,
Merong, di ba, nakwento ko nga din dito sa programa ninyo na meron kaming tinignan na video na di umano, grabe na yung law and order. This was, I think 2 months before the midterm election. Pinalalabas nila na grabe na yung gulo, na meron pang, ang tawag dito, meron pang riot sa isang mall. Pero, pagka tiningnan mo yung video, may nakalagay doon na, ang tawag dito, JCPenney.
Yes, that's right.
So sabi ko, wala naman JCPenney sa Pilipinas eh. At 2 bansa lang ang alam ko may JCPenney bukod sa Estados Unidos, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, Argentina. No? Paano naging mukha kasing mga Pilipino yung mga tao doon sa riot, no? Kasi mga Latino eh. So mga kahawig natin talaga ito, mga ito, no? Hindi ko sinasabing gwapo yung mga Pilipino, pero gwapo naman talaga. No? So in other words, alam mo, at the end of this day, hindi ako naiinis eh, na-amuse nga ako dito sa mga style nila, no? At ang lumalabas hindi mo talaga maloloko yung mga Pilipino. Hindi naman tayo mga ob eh. So lumalabas dito talagang from the very start there was already intent on the part of groups, no, to undermine the administration and essentially put in place someone that is friendlier to them. Let's just put it at that. Friendly to
So
them.
yung minomonitor nyo po yan, yung group ninyo, and you have a strong evidence to back up this theory?
I've in fact posted already in social media at least snapshots of our report, because again, at the end of the day, it's not for a private firm to say that this is actually happening. We can only say that it should be investigated. And this is what I'm saying. And again, it's a good thing na nakita ko na sa report na tinitingnan na nga talaga ito ng mga otoridad. No, ngayon kung sasabihin nila na Prof, wala naman kaming nakita eh. Well, at least we've already given them, no, initial reports in this regard. No, whether they will be able to trace it or not is an entirely different story. But again, what I'm saying is, while we don't have any specific evidence tying a particular country, we have reports detailing already a playbook. And in other words, if you put 2 and 2 things together, yung step-by-step process na ginagawa, no, na lumabas na sa ibang bansa, no, napakita na, no, and in fact maraming nakalistang mga bansa na talagang kasama doon sa kanilang operation, hindi malayo na talagang merong foreign interference at pwede nating sabihin na this particular country really, no, is involved.
Alright, with that, maraming salamat po ulit sa inyong insight. Professor Edmund Tayao, President and CEO of the Political Economic Elemental Researchers and Strategists, or PEERS. Maraming salamat po muli.
For his perspective on today's political situation amid the protests, we welcome now in the studio political analyst and professor at the San Beda University Graduate School of Law, Professor Ed Tayao. Prof. Ed, thank you for coming.
Thanks
for having
Professor.
me.
So, you've seen the rally today. How do you assess the rally today compared to September 21?
Well, September 21, as we've been talking about off-cam, talagang malaki yun, no? Definitely bigger than this one. But I'm inclined more to compare it with the, more recent rally, no? Because it's kind of telling, no? Una, there's no particular personality.
The more recent rally being?
The INC rally.
Okay.
No.
In People Power, the UPI.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. No, because it's kind of obvious. No, I mean, you're calling out corruption, but it's as if you have already assumed that there are particular personalities that are free from corruption, which is unusual. That's to say the least. Yeah.
I take it that you're saying that you are also against the call for resignation.
Yeah, I'm very much against the call for resignation. I mean, I don't think the president is perfect. I don't think we've ever had a perfect president. But we should learn from the 2 EDSAs we've had already. I mean, kung talaga naging effective yung dalawang EDSA na yun, why are we still having this same kind of problems? At the end of the day, it's really the system or lack of system that is the problem here. Until such time that we're able to address it, wala, paulit-ulit lang tayo.
So you're a political analyst. You've seen the recent actions of the president, as Pinky mentioned a while ago, the president's daily report. Do those things give you comfort that we're moving a step towards prosecution and justice?
I'm inclined to think that there are concrete steps already taken, but there's so much still to be had. No? I mean, fine. I mean, expected naman na mas madaling patunayan yung mga directly involved, DPWH. But yung gustong mangyari nung kabila na they've demonized the word insertion. Actually, kung nakakaintindi ka ng legislation, yung insertion, kasama sa legislation yan. Hindi mo pwede tanggalin yan. So kapag mali pala yung insertion, edi lahat yan ikulong mo. Now, having said that, kung merong maling insertion, you should be able to tie it up with the consummation of the act. Paano tumawid yung perang in-insert, saan pumunta, paano nagamit, and so on. And last but not the least.
At kinurakot pa.
Exactly. Kailangan matay mo yun. Kailangan makita mo no? And last but not the least, I've been dealing with the government on and off, different agencies and so on. Ngayon lang ako nakakita ng ahensya, DPWH lang yung bukod tangi na magbabayad ng contractor cash. Medyo kalokohan yun Kaya mahirap mong patunayan Kasi cash mo babayaran yung contractor. Kaya,
ano bang normal, di ba?
Usually check yan or bank to bank yan
Pero din-deposit sa bank ng contractor yan
Hindi, exactly. Pero paano mo i-deposit sa bank ng contractor? Still. No? I mean, may mga instances na dinedeposit sa bangko ng contractor, yung contractor ang nag-withdraw, but there were instances, if we doon sa Senate investigation, it's the DPWH themselves who withdrew it, no? And encashed the check, I suppose, and gave it in cold cash. So bakit allowed sila ng ganon? So kaya wala kang paper trail Kaya madaling magsabi na safe na ako kasi hindi ka naman talaga directly tatanggap niyan, Sek Meron kang
That's the point.
Bagman.
That's the point. I wanted
Kaya
to
systemic yan.
follow up on that because while we have some DPWH officials already in jail because of the first batch of cases that were filed, it includes, of course, former Congressman Zaldico, who is not here and cannot be found.
Na walang kinita daw.
Wala po siyang kinita sa sinabi po niya sa kanyang video, is how do you actually really connect the legislators who may be guilty because they, if at all they are guilty, should have been smart enough to have a bagman.
Exactly.
But on one exception, if you look at and go back to the testimony of Undersecretary Bernardo, meron ho kasi siyang supposed to be direct na ibinigay na pera kay dating Senador Bong Revilla. Yung direct yun lamang. But I believe the rest were not really direct.
Yeah, exactly. So, paano mo nga yun nga yung kailangan mong mapatunayan doon no? Kaya, at the end of the day, at the least that we can do is to introduce systemic change. That's why I've been insisting, we have to follow the money. Alam mo, kaya tayo masyadong you're a lawyer, Sek. Bakit tayo dependent sa witnesses? Kasi wala kang documentary evidence wala kang konkretong sa tagal ng paglilitis ng kaso dito, pag kinausap ka na, di tapos na, no? Kasi dependent nga doon sa witness. However, if the system is foolproof and that you can very well prove how the money proceeds from one hand to another, corroboration na lang ang kailangan mo as far as witnesses is concerned. So systemic talaga. Now, I'm insisting it's the word systemic kasi maling-mali yung sasabihin mo. Paniniwalaan mo ba si Saldi? Pinawalang sala niya kagad yung mga Duterte, hindi daw sila kasali. Samantala, in most of the public hearings done in the Senate, no? Ilang beses tinanong si Diskaya, kailan ba kayo lumaki? Hindi na kailangan ulit-ulitin yan. And the same thing, Saldico, kailan ba siya lumaking kontraktor? So in other words, kung gusto talaga, seryoso talaga tayo, no? Balikan natin, hindi naman ito unang nangyari. Nagka-Napoles na tayo. At buti nga yung Napoles, kahit papano nakita natin may mukha. Itong Parmali, nawala na lang parang bula. no?
Yeah.
Na kailangan talagang balikan lahat. Kung seryoso tayo at gusto talaga nating, ang tawag dito, we want them to be accountable, we should really look into all of these scams.
But as a lawyer, Attorney Edwin, ang usapan ho kasi talaga dito is proof beyond reasonable
Exactly.
doubt, Professor, right? So if we were to follow the law strictly, kailan walang kaduda-dudang guilty ang mga ito.
Correct.
So, mapapatunayan ho kaya yon, especially with so many layers now that are put in place before the accusing finger points to the particular person who's guilty.
That's why you need to have the state witness, or you really, for example, I'll give an example of what Ed was saying. In the case of Chis Escudero, di ba, Bernardo testified that he gave the money to Maynard Ngu. So the process now is you're going to sue Maynard Ngu. So you file a case against Maynard Ngu, and then at some point, he may decide to point to Chis, may or may not decide. So that's the way you do cases, kasuhan, kasi it's really
So
personal
ganun lang
testimony.
talaga. So
Ganun.
you have to go
Oo.
through the bagman
Yes.
now and file a case against the bagman. And it's up to the bagman to actually say yes or no.
Exactly.
Agree or not.
Exactly.
Refute it, approve or deny.
Yeah, exactly. Kaya nga pinag-aawayan itong state witness eh. Na sinasabi ni Senator Marcoleta, hindi daw kailangan magbalik, ha? No? So, another questionable remark. Ini-insist niya na hindi kailangan magbalik ng... Hindi naman yun ang issue dito eh. Whether or not it's provided for by law, it's ang tawag dito, goodwill.
Act of
It's an
goodwill.
indication that, hey, I'm really serious at getting to the bottom of this and I'm going to help you and so on and so forth. Now, having said that, yun yung sinasabi ni Sec ngayon, no? So, ang puntiryahin mo, yung involved, na directly involved, pag kumantayan ngayon, di yan ang state witness mo.
Yan naman talagang, even the RICO statute, the mafia, you start with the...
Exactly.
Sa babae.
Let's go back a little bit, just to backtrack. When you talked about the Napoles case way back, 3 government officials were jailed.
Yeah.
The late Senator Enrique,
JPE,
Senator
Jinggoy.
Bong, and Senator Jinggoy. You do recall that the supposed person who wrote or signed, tama ho ba?
Si Ben Herluy? Are you
Hindi, si Cambe.
okay. I
Si
don't
Mr.
remember.
Cambe
Okay.
na accused
Naalala
together
mo
with
pa.
Senator Bong Revilla,
Yeah.
he actually suffered in
Yes.
jail.
Oo nga pala.
And died.
And died in
And
jail.
died.
So when I look back at the Napoles case, yun po yung naaalala ko.
Yeah.
I think ang first name po niya, Richard Cambe,
Richard Cambe.
na staff ni Senator Bong
Yes,
Revilla,
yes.
na siya ang itinapon sa kulungan at namatay po siya doon.
Exactly. Siyempre, so ganun siya ka-loyal. No? In other words, na-identify siya as directly involved, but in the whole process, no, the logical thing to do is to give up the principal. But this guy probably, whatever the reason was really that loyal, no? And he didn't give up the principal.
He took the bullet
He took the bullet.
That happens.
Yeah.
In the same way, remember, this isn't just the farther down is the assassination of Ninoy Aquino. Nobody squealed. Even I asked President Aquino, he wouldn't say, but he had an inkling who, but he never told us. But ang mga nadamay lang are the foot soldiers,
That's right.
di ba? Nobody, I suppose they were promised something by
That's right.
whoever was the mastermind. So that's going to happen.
What about your thoughts, Professor? Even Attorney Edwin, doon sa sinasabi nilang ang bagal ng proseso. Just also to put context into it. Meron ho kasing nababagalan, pero meron din ho kasi talagang kailangan pa nilang. Ganito na lang po. Iiksian ko na lang yung tanong. Mabagal ho ba para sa inyo ang naging aksyon ng ICI?
Well, kung ako ay nasa grupo ng DDS, sasabihin ko mabagal. But ang tawag dito, let's be fair. Kailan ba sumigaw ang Pangulo? July, August, September, October, November, December. So, maglilimang buwan. It's best to ask a lawyer. No? Gaano ba katagal bago mapunta man lang sa indictment muna?
Yeah.
I think they had to go through ICI because si Sammy Martirez wasn't acting. I mean, nag-retire na eh.
Yeah,
So there wasn't anything moving. But when Boeing took over, medyo bumilis.
Yes.
In fact, he has made certain commitments that are quite questionable. Like, by December 15, I'm going to...
May makukulong.
Parang he's so definitive about it. So
Yeah.
that's something that's nakakataka rin na he can be so confident. No? But at least, maybe to assure the public that things are moving. So that's why the president is also doing a daily report, a daily update.
Kasi
Siguro
madalas
dagdagan ko
kung-
na lang, before he became ombudsman kasi, nag-DOJ. So,
Yeah.
nasundan niya from start.
Right. Madalas ko din kasing naririnig sa ilang mga nakakasama ko, bagal-bagal naman, wala pang nakukulong. Kaya that's why I was bringing it up. And then there's that other side, the flip side to that is, an investigation also takes time to also protect the right of the particular respondent.
And
Diba?
most importantly, you'd like to file a case that's really
Airtight.
strong, airtight.
Yun lang po. Ang mangyayari niyan, let's say for example, the second set of arrest warrants will be issued. Alam mo nang hinahanap na kayong lahat, di ba? There's a big possibility talagang alis ka na lang
Yes.
Correct.
ng bansa kung ayaw mong makulong dito.
Exactly.
Dahil it's certain ikaw ang susunod kung
Exactly.
sino man sila.
Exactly.
Pero at least they're putting the fear of God into these people. I mean, dati, walang ganon. I mean, look at Jinggoy, Bong, and what's the other guy? Si JPE. They were I was referring to the Napoles case. Parang they were still very fancy-free until the cases were filed and they were arrested, no? This time around, parang si Boeing was already giving them fair warning, you're next.
So there's a
may
tipping
ganun.
point. I mean, at a certain stage, yung mismong anak ni Saldi ko, di ba, sinasabi niya, magsisi ka na, parang gano'n ang sinasabi niya sa tatay niya. So at the end of the day, these are all not only eye-opener, but it's an opportunity for us to really institute real change finally.
So essentially, you're basically satisfied with the pace of the prosecution.
Again, there's so much more to be had, as I've said, no. But precisely because the existing setup, and I never called it a system anymore, you know that, precisely is because lahat nakatutok sa personalidad, no. Hanggat hindi natin binabago yan. Actually, bakit ba tayo may corruption? Tatakbo ka. Ikaw, having been a cabinet member yourself, having had experience, a lawyer, and so on and so on. If you run for office, you think you can run, probably, but you have to have the money. But if your own personal money will be your campaign chest, babawiin mo yan.
Yeah.
At pag nabawi mo, madali mo nabawi, ang dali ko palang bawiin. Dodoblehin mo ito, triplehin mo, until such time na hindi natin nababago yan, balik tayo ng
Do
balik.
you agree with Pinky's suggestion that we should really come up with an anti-political dynasty law?
Well, that's one of those steps. But again, if we change the setup wherein we have real political parties, LP is one of a real political party but cannot operate as a real political party in an existing setup. Pag nilagay na natin yan, kahit naman saan ka magpunta, may political dynasty. The only difference is in other countries, kahit na anak ka ng dating presidente o presidente, dadaan ka doon sa proseso bago. Hindi yung wala kang magawa, no? Sikat ka, abogado ka, or singer ka, boxinger. Kinabukasan, gumising ka, wala kang magawa, takbo kaya ako. Ganyan
So parang
sa atin.
ang anak ng presidente, hindi kaagad magiging majority leader yan.
Oo, hindi ganyan ang sistema. Hindi yung dating
Sa strong
congressman,
political
mahilig ka lang sa
party
pusa,
system.
pwede ka na maging congressman.
Yeah.
No, hindi ganon.
So maraming talagang pagbabago.
Yeah.
We were talking about it.
Pero
There's,
what do you see at the end of the rainbow? Ano nakikita mo?
Well, right now, step by step muna tayo. Let's have all those need to be accounted or have to be accountable. No? Make them accountable first. And then after that, no, nakita natin, uy, seryoso pala talaga si Pangulong Marcos. And then let's step forward towards system change.
what will make you think that the president is really serious?
Aba,
Sino ho ang kailangan maging accountable for you to say that the president is serious?
Obvious naman at merong senador at congressman dyan, wala pa nga nahuhuli. Pero dapat yan, pagka nakasuhan, hindi yung bigla-bigla na lang mapapawalang sala, no? Pinagsasauli ka na nga ng 200 million, hindi mo pa sinauli. Tapos ang kapal mong magsasabi na malinis ka, hindi naman tama yun.
All right. Political analyst, Professor EdTayao's, sir, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, thank you.
Political analyst. Prof, live kayo sa RMNDZ XL Manila, si Radyo Man Lourdes. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Lourdes.
Prof, sa tingin niyo ho ba may epekto ho ba sa ICI, sa investigation? Kalusugan ang dahilan, latest po ito, kapapasok lang nagbitiw na po si Commissioner Secretary Singson as a member ng ICI.
I wouldn't know, Lourdes, kasi ngayon ko lang din narinig yan. No? I have to know the details first. But I would suppose must have something to do with the this extent of the investigation already undertaken. Because if I'm not mistaken, they've already gone to the part where they're ready to file charges already, no? So baka yun ang dahilan niyan, no? So yeah, I wouldn't know, no, because it's also the first time that I'm hearing about it.
Baka naapektuhan na po yung kanyang mental health, kalusugan sa sobrang tindi po ng korupsyong kanyang narinig.
Pwede nating sabihin yon, but again, yeah, I don't want to speculate. So I'd rather find out what his official statement has been, no, in this regard. But yeah, posible yan kasi hindi na rin naman bata si Secretary Singson, no. But to say that it's because of the extent of corruption, ang tingin talaga natin sobrang tindi ng corruption kasi unang-una, ramdam natin dahil baha ang pinag-uusapan natin eh. So basta nabaha ka, ramdam mo. Pero matagal nang tugtugin yung corruption, no? Kaya nga nagkaroon na tayo ng 2 EDSA, no? At talagang grabe lang ang propaganda ng mga Duterte na sinasabi nila na sila malinis. At ngayon lang sa gobyernong ito nangyari itong corruption na to. Matagal na po yan, no? Nakailang administrasyon na din po at bawat administrasyon merong istorya palagi ng anomalya. Ang kaibahan lang, ito talagang in-expose at talagang pinangalandakan na ganito na pala ang sitwasyon. Kasi systemic ito, Lourdes.
Opo.
Ngayon, yung argumento nila na mas sobrang laki ngayon kasi billion-billion. In the first place, kaya billion-billion na ngayon kasi nga it has reached its apogee. Sa madalit sabi, kung sa kontratista ang pag-uusapan, katulad ng mga Diskaya, kung natatandaan ninyo, ilang beses silang naimbitahan sa Senado at tinanong kailan ba sila nagsimula at kailan sila lumaki bilang kontratista. Kung hindi kasi sila lumaking kontratista, hindi sila magkwa-qualify doon sa mga malalaking kontrata. Kaya nga may mga gradation yung mga kontratista. Merong A, merong double, merong triple, may quadruple A, no? Depende kasi sa laki ng kontratista yan. Which means, kaya lumaki kasi nga may pinagsimulan at yung pinagsimulan, kailangan matuntun din natin kung gusto talaga nating masolusyonan lahat ito. And so I don't agree with the premise that, sobrang laki and so on. Matagal na pong sobrang laki kasi ang basehan ko ng laki ng corruption ay nasa percentage ng GDP. Yung pong milyon, 10, 20 years ago, definitely billion na ngayon, no? Ang inflation lang pag-usapan natin yung piso mo dati baka 10 centimos na lang ngayon.
Talaga, opo.
So yun ang punto natin dito. Ang bottom line, no? Regardless kung sino ang involved at kung kailangan talagang tuldukan na yan, kailangan talagang matapos yung investigasyon. Kaya kung akong tatanungin, hindi dapat pinag-uusapan yung resignation. Lalo tayong walang mapupuntahan yan dahil yung papalit, nakakasiguro ka ba na mas maayos na tao yan?
Pero Professor, sandali, meron ba kayo naiisip, no, na akma na pumalit?
Alam mo, mahirap yung tanong mo. It's difficult to second guess the appointing power, no? But the little that I know as far as the plan to really get to the bottom of this, the original plan was to invite a former Chief Justice. No, hindi ko na lang papangalanan. Kaya nabigla ako nung ang na-appoint ay si Chairman Reyes, no? Who is also a former member of the Supreme Court, and I think the president, of course, knows who's appointing, no? So okay naman, no? But as to recommend or figure out who can take the place of Secretary Singson, medyo mahirap, no? Maganda yung si Secretary Singson kasi nung panahon nila na-establish na yung mga indicators, no, that will allow the assessment and monitoring of ongoing projects na tinanggal lahat nung nakaraang administrasyon.
Professor, ano po ang inyong masasabi sa ICI live streaming. Nakita na po ninyo, nasimulan na ho, though kanina may mga humirit ng executive session kasi mabubuli sila, threat sa family po. Pero ano po inyong masasabi? Satisfied ho ba kayo sa ganon?
I will go back to the interview of Mayor Benji when he left the ICI, no? And even when Mayor Benji left the ICI, he was interviewed and he was asked what his assessment of ICI is. And his answer, the way I remember it, is that he thinks that the process that the ICI has been following is above board. And if you remember, nung time na yon, hindi pa nga televised, no? Hindi pa open sa publiko yung proseso ng ICI. At kaya siya tinanong kung satisfied siya sa proseso ng ICI. At siya mismo ang nagsabi, in fact, uma-attend pa din siya regularly kasi naniniwala siya na tama naman yung direksyon ng ICI. Personally, I wouldn't know, Lourdes. Again, ayokong manghula, no? Hindi naman ako katulad ng ibang analyst na alam ko lahat ng sagot. Ang tawag dito, I've never sat nor observed in the process of the ICI, and perhaps it is also best to ask for comments, no? A trial lawyer for that purpose. But so far, yung mga komento, no, lalo na ni Mayor Benji, wala naman ako narinig na negative na comment ni Mayor Benji sa ICI other than yung feeling niya pinag-initan siya nung time na nandun siya, no? So I suppose, no, okay naman yung proseso ng ICI. Talagang matagal ang paglilitis dito, Lourdes, no? At yun ang isang rason kung bakit nakakainis itong alam mo, talagang panggugulo na lang itong ginagawa ng grupo ng mga Duterte kasi ang gusto lang talaga nilang mangyari pumalit sila sa pwesto. Yun lang naman yan eh. At hindi natin maitatanggi that whether we like it or not. At ngayon, naglalabasan na. Nung una, kakaunti lang kami nagsasabi na merong impluensya ang China dito, no? Walang naniniwala. Pero ngayon, unti-unti, lumalabas na meron pala talagang ganong ayuda o meron talagang ganong impluensya. So, what I'm trying to say here is kailangang tingnan nating mabuti itong patuloy na pag-iimbestiga ng ICI at dapat natuto na tayo doon sa Napoles at saka yung Farmally. Nako, talagang nakakabuisit yung Farmally. Pandemic na, ninakawan pa tayo, no? Pero parang nawala na lang, parang bula. So, my point is, I'm sure the President knows that the investigation really has to come up with something more definitive. Hindi na pwede yung resulta katulad nung kay Napoles na biglang napawalang sala pa yung mga principal, no? So kailangan matapos ito ng maayos, and then from there we introduce systemic changes, Lourdes. Huling-huli, no? Pasensya na, mahaba
Okay lang po.
Yung systemic changes na pinag-uusapan, simulan dyan sa DPWH kasi alam mo, bukod tangi yung ahensyang yan na magbabayad ng mga kontraktor in cash, no? Siguro maganda matanong ninyo yung mga ibang nagkaroon na rin naman ng kontrata o may kontrata sa gobyerno. What I know is that contractors or consultants are paid by way of checks or bank transfers. Alam mo, importante yung ganong proseso kasi meron kang paper trail, no? Itong mga taga DPWH, bukod tangi, cash ang binibigay nila. Kaya nga, hindi, alam mo, yun ang rason kung bakit may ibang mga senador bigla-biglang safe na, ganun kagad yung kanilang latag, no? Kasi hindi naman talaga sila yung personal na tumatanggap. Kaya nga uso yung bagman. So dapat ipagbawal yung ganyang klase ng transaksyon. Dapat ang bayaran ng mga kontratista ay kung hindi cheque, bank transfer para merong paper trail. Kasi kung ganyan, Lourdes, magiging dependent lang talaga tayo sa witnesses. Yung witnesses, pag kinausap mo na yan at nabigyan mo na yan, tapos na. Kasi lalo na't napakatagal ng paglilitis. Tingnan mo yung mga nangyari kay Napoles. No, ano ba ito, assistant ng isang senator, namatay na't lahat sa sa kulungan, no? Parang ang lumalabas malinis pa yung principal nila, no? So this is really very disheartening as far as the kind of setup we have. We don't have a functioning political system, really.
Pero Professor, sa inyo po, dapat bang may live streaming o wag na lang kung puro executive session na
May
rin lang?
limitation kasi, Lourdes kasi lalong-lalo na kayo na rin nga ang may sabi, sobrang tindi ng extent nitong nangyayari. So hindi natin maiiwasan na merong hesitation, lalong-lalo na kung witness ang nakausap. Ano? So hindi yan magsasalita kung nakalatag yan sa buong madla. So kaya nga kinote ko si Mayor Benji kasi inexplain ni Mayor Benji na may mga pagkakataon talaga, whether we like it or not, it has to be executive session because we also have to consider carefully, no, the security of all those who are going to who will be asked to answer questions, no, especially witnesses. Otherwise, they will not cooperate because for obvious reasons they will secure themselves first, no, before anything.
Opo. Ito po sa ibang tanong, ano po inyong masasabi? Ito ho ba ay dapat at patuloy na magtago, tanggalan ng sweldo? Ito pong sitwasyon ngayon ni Senator Bato de la Rosa.
Alam mo kung ganyan siya, I don't know kung mananalo pa yan, no? Very obvious naman na talagang nagtatago. At ayaw niyang mahuli siya kasi alam na kumbaga hindi na kailangang paulit-ulit pa yan So in other words, even his colleagues in the Senate has already called it, no? In other words, they called the attention of the senator. Tumakbo-takbo kang senador tapos ganyan ng estilo mo hindi maganda. At saka hindi ba't na nung araw ang tatapang nila pareho ni dating Pangulong Digong na they will face the music regardless. Asan na yung pananalitang yon ngayon?
Pero ang punto kasi Professor din, sumisweldo po, tuloy-tuloy pala ito. Makita ka o hindi, magtrabaho ka o hindi, kompleto raw ang sahod.
Kaya nga, kailangang maintindihan ng taong bayan yan. Di ba't gustong-gusto naman ng taong bayan ng mga Duterte, ang mga kaalyado ng Duterte. So siguro, pag-isipan nilang mabuti kung tama pa din itong nangyayaring ito. Kailangan lang po nating klaruhin. Hindi ho dapat tayo maka-Duterte, maka-Marcos, maka-Aquino. Kailangan tingnan nating mabuti ano ba talaga yung totoo. Kasi kung bago pa man dumating doon sa mga facts and figures, in other words, those concrete evidences that will allow us to make the right decisions, meron na tayo kagad husga na malinis itong taong ito at mali itong taong to, wala ho tayong mararating. Talagang magsisisihan lang tayo at mag-aaway-away pa tayo. At kaya ako laging binabanggit yung China kasi sila ang magbebenepisyo pag nag-away-away tayo.
Okay, panghuli po, ano po yung impact sa Kongreso ng kanilang ginawang pagdisiplina kay Representative Kiko Barzaga? Merong ilan na nagsabi na, ba't inuna ito? Dapat inuna natin yung mga sangkot sa korupsyon, sa flood control anomalies.
Alam mo, hindi question yan ng ano yung mauuna Ang question lang yung appropriate, no? Unang-una, yung sa mga flood control anomaly, hindi naman yan tinatantanan Kaya lang siyempre, mas magtatagal yan. Ngayon, itong kay Kiko Barzaga, hindi ko alam kung saang planeta galing yung mamang yan. Ang tawag dito, ginagawa pang hero, no, ng mga Duterte. At ito pa, meron pa siyang statement na yung pagkamatay daw niya, magti-trigger ng revolt. Hindi ko alam kung anong klaseng pag-iisip meron ito no? So baka siguro mas maganda siya yung ipa-hair follicle kasi in other words, the bottom line here why this is my reaction is if you're a member of Congress, no, regardless whether you're fighting corruption, if indeed you are fighting corruption, sabi nga nila, pwede namang ang paraan mo yung maayos na paraan na unang-una hindi ka nang babastos. Pangalawa, hindi weirdo at talagang kakaiba yung estilo nitong si Kiko Barsaga. So sa madalit sabi, kahit pasabihin na po natin na talagang ang buong House of Representatives binubuo ng mga magnanakaw. Whether we like it or not, the House of Representatives is an institution in itself, and it's intended to be the House of Representatives of the people. In other words, whether we like it or not, there are standards and there are ethical standards, there are protocols that have to be followed by every member of Congress. Kahit na po sinong miyembro ng Congress, kung ganyan ang kasama mo, no, na wala sa ayos, hindi naman nakakatuwa na yon, Lourdes.
Sandali, sir. Sir, tingin niyo ho, honestly, no, may, paano ba natin sasabihin, there's something wrong kay Ginoong Barzaga?
I'm no expert, Lourdes, no, and I wouldn't really want to to think that there's something wrong with him. If there's anything, what is obvious is that he's hungry for attention. He wants attention, and ito din yung nagkakapitalize yung grupo ng mga Duterte kasi siyempre hindi naman sila nawawala sa usapin o sa usapan ng publiko, no? So habang maingay ito si Barsaga, kahit na walang katuturan yung mga pinag-iingay niya, dinadala pa din ng dyaryo, ng radyo, ng news TV. So napapag-usapan at napapag-usapan. Tapos meron pa silang mga vlogger. So yun lang ang purpose niyan eh. Now, whether or not sira ang ulo o may something wrong, hindi natin malalaman. Ang eksperto lang ang makakaalam niyan. At siguro kapag he will undergo a test, which is something that is his call, no, as a person. That's the only time we'll know. It's unfair if we say na may something na wrong, no? Ang sigurado lang dito, gusto lang niyang mapansin.
Hindi naman ba siya ginagamit?
Alam mo, pareho lang naman yan. Alam mo, sa politika, magagamit ka at gagamitin ka din. So, ganyan naman yan eh. So, it's not a question of whether he's being used. Definitely he's being used. But the fact that he's allowing himself to be used, that also means he sees something that benefits him, no? With the arrangement that he allows himself to be used.
Professor, maraming salamat sa inyo pong panahon, sa inyo pong opinion. Thank you, sir. Maraming salamat po.
There's anger on the streets in the Philippines. A corruption scandal over flood control projects has rocked the country. Protesters are calling for the president to resign. Can Marcos Jr. survive the fury? I'm Hazem Sika, and today's newsmaker is the Philippines. Billions of dollars had been set aside for flood control projects in a country that has seen far too many of them. Powerful politicians, including allies of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., are accused of lining their own pockets with the money. Marcos Jr. has promised to go after those responsible, but many Filipinos say the president is part of the problem. Tens of thousands of people filled the streets of the Philippine capital, Manila, on Sunday, demanding his resignation.
Manila is not just protesting corruption, it's questioning power. Across the Philippines, tens of thousands are demanding answers after investigators uncovered billions of pesos meant for flood control projects that were paid out but never built, even as deadly storms hit the country. Auditors estimate that between 2023 and 25, up to 118.5 billion pesos, roughly $2 billion a year, was siphoned away through rigged contracts and kickbacks.
It's clear that corruption runs from the bottom to the top. The problem is systemic. Filipinos need to unite to stop this system of corrupt dynasties. We are here to assert that the corruption is too much and must stop.
Those allegations are now being examined in Congress. The focus now squarely on the man at the top.
Before Christmas, the cases of these shameless people who steal the people's money will be completed. They won't have a Merry Christmas. They will be jailed.
The fallout has begun. 2 ministers have resigned, including the budget chief. And the president's cousin, House Speaker Martin Romualdez, has stepped aside. Authorities say 12 billion pesos in suspect assets have been frozen, with 7 officials already behind bars, signs of a government under growing strain. And that strain is now reaching beyond government offices and into the country's political power base. The influential religious bloc Iglesia Ni Cristo, nearly 3 million strong and known for bloc voting, helped sweep Marcos to power in 2022. Now, angered by what it calls a lack of transparency in the corruption probe, the INC has stepped away from Marcos and repositioned behind Vice President Sara Duterte, his former ally turned rival, who has since intensified her public criticism of the president.
Clear answers on how
the president now faces a profound crisis of confidence, especially in the way these corruption investigations are being handled, which appear to lack both direction and resolve. We also see clear answers on how a budget that deprived Filipinos of billions and billions of pesos was approved under his watch. I'm one with the millions of Filipinos who are disappointed by the government. Our right to speak and express is the backbone of democracy. The government must listen to this. We Filipinos deserve better.
deserve better.
What started as a corruption scandal over missing flood money has become a battle for the country's political future. And for Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the challenge now comes from both ends, a former ally closing ranks above and an angry public closing in below.
Well, joining me now from Quezon City in the Philippines, assistant professor at the University of the Philippines College of Law, Paolo Tamasi. From Manila, we have political analyst and president of the Political Economic Elemental Researchers and Strategists, Edmund Tayao. And also from the country's capital, political science professor at the University of the Philippines, Dilman Aris Arugay. Thank you very much for being with us, gentlemen. Paolo, if I could start with you. Just give us a sense of how bad this is, how vast these allegations of corruption go, and what's at stake here for the Philippines.
I think if you look at the larger history of the Philippines, corruption scandals, and they come in every few years, this one is unprecedented in both the amount that's involved and just the number of officials and private co-conspirators that are involved in the corruption mess. And I think it shows a failure of a lot of accountability institutions, ranging from the courts all the way to agencies that are responsible for this, and a lot of it really at stake as to the effectiveness of whether anti-corruption laws and institutions can ever work in the country.
Edmund Tayao, what's your view on how President Marcos Jr. has been handling this? I mean, in public, he seems to be saying all the right things. We're going to fully investigate this. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. No one's going to be spared, and so on. But that doesn't seem to be enough for many Filipinos.
Well, if you're going to ask those who's really wanting him to resign, then that's really not enough. But if we are going to ask, and we have lawyers, one of the guests, we know how much time and what's the process it takes before someone is held accountable. And as already mentioned, the institutions that supposed to matter as far as these issues are concerned seem to be not working. And I couldn't agree more that the recent scandal is seen as unprecedented because it's the only time that it is admitted to be actually happening, no? But the whole investigation has been suggesting that it has been going on for many administrations already. So this is really something that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, is it? That this is something that goes well before Marcos's administration. Arias Aruga, how it gets the question of how much responsibility does he have to take here, because it goes beyond him, but he at the moment is the man at the top. The buck stops with him.
Yes, that's right. If we're talking about command responsibility, the fiscal spending and how the budget is implemented is under the executive. But let's remember, he is the one who blew the whistle on this corruption scandal. And the hypothetical is that if he did not make those shame on you, quote unquote, remarks during the State of the Nation address, then maybe we won't know about the extent of this corruption that is indeed unprecedented. So, in a way, the president seemed to be exasperated as some of members of Philippine society. But given the available information, there's only one, if not very few people that have directly implicated him in the scandal thus far. But as I would say, we're still, I think, at the tip of the iceberg of this corruption mess. And if we see more information that might directly implicate him, members of his family, as well as others, then it should not just be about command responsibility, but direct accountability as well.
Paolo Tomasi, how much of a knock-on effect is this having on the Philippine economy in all areas, not just directly in terms of money that was set aside that wasn't spent, but also in the macro view, what this is doing for foreign investor confidence and so on?
Well, we really can't underestimate the role of government spending in the Philippine economy. It's a huge driver, especially coming after the pandemic. And I think you can actually make the argument that the reason why this flood control scandal grew is because of a real push for more infrastructure in the last administration, which allowed us to be very loose with a lot of our budget requirements. But on the investment side, you start really to see, and reports are coming in both officially and from anecdotally from within the profession, of how foreign investors are being turned off by all of this. We are set to miss our growth target for this year by 0.5%, which was already adjusted as it is. And just a few days ago, our stock market reached the lowest point in probably a decade. So there's certainly an effect on the Philippine economy at a time when a lot of people are suffering from unprecedented natural calamities as well, which are really impacted by the flood control issue.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more of that with Edmund. How much of an effect is this having on people on the ground, those who have suffered greatly because of the floods, and the investment just isn't there right now, whether it's for flood control, prevention, or rebuilding and so on?
Well, it's actually a mixed reaction, I have to say. No, of course, if we're talking about the foreign direct investment or new investments coming in, this is much of a standstill, no, so to speak, precisely because the reaction of the international community has really been negative. But if we are looking at how inflation is reflecting the scandals, I'm inclined to think the easiest measure is the pump price of oil, and we've even experienced the Iran war, and it did not hit the 60 pesos per liter rate, no, unlike in 2019 when the per liter price made it higher than 70 pesos, no. So in terms of in terms of inflation, I think we're able to manage it. But in terms of was this expanding the economy, that's the one that's most affected.
Arias Arugay, the president has promised that there will be arrests over these corruption allegations by Christmas. How is that a realistic timetable at this point? How likely is that? And if that does happen, where do things go from there?
Right. I think this promise needs to be taken very seriously by the administration and should not renege on this promise. But not only people getting arrested, but really what we call here in the Philippines the big fish, because so far arrests have been made, but they're the small fry, the ones that at the bottom of the totem pole. I think in terms of impact, the Marcos Jr. administration must see to it that before the year ends, it's actually able to make good on its promise to at least hold these people accountable through arrest. There's some attempts at, there are already some initiatives at restitution, but a couple of 100 million pesos, we're talking about that. But I think if this year ends without the major players or the major actors being implicated in the scandal, there are no charges being filed, then it would speak really negatively about the ability of the Marcos Jr. administration to hold on and make good on its promise.
Paolo Tomase, if we look at the vice president for a moment, Sara Duterte, the daughter of Rodrigo Duterte, the former president who is now in The Hague on war crimes charges, they were part of the same ticket when in the election victory, but they have since parted ways politically, and she has wasted no time in seemingly getting political advantage out of this. Is this scandal a gift to her career and her future ambitions?
In a way, it is. The year began really not so well for the vice president because she was subject to quite a rare impeachment in the Philippine Congress. She basically got off because the Supreme Court has nullified that impeachment. But the scandal notably was also a corruption scandal on her part. There was a misuse of confidential intelligence funds allegedly against her. But the amount that was alleged to have been stolen by her or misused by her is nowhere near the total amount that's involved in the flood control mess. And so, in a way, it's a gift to her. But at the same time, it also, I think, covers up for the fact that many of the flood control issues began in the last administration, just with how budgeting collapsed as a process, and how government accountability was really replaced by a larger impunity. So that may well come back to haunt her at some point, and I'm sure Iris would have his own views on how this will work out for her. But so far, she's not, she's getting away from the mess that the flood control issue created. She's not one of the people who are implicated in the projects that are being investigated now.
Edmund Tayao, what do you think this means for the vice president? Because there are many Filipinos out there who say that she's also part of the problem. It isn't just one president or one administration. It's the entire political class.
Well, let me take off from the reply earlier. No, it would seem that by direct implication, there's nothing that shows as far as the vice president is concerned. But all those already implicated, particularly the big contractors who've been invited in the Senate for public hearing, no. They've all traced that they became big as contractors during the time of the previous administration. So in other words, by implication, it would appear that that Duterte administration started, or much of all this mess started during the past administration, or at the very least, they became bigger, during the past administration. Actually, that's one of the reasons why many seem to be hesitant, to support the vice president's taking over the presidency. There's been continuing calls for the president to resign. But these continuing calls for resignation actually come from the same group. If you are going to ask those who are really wanting and watching how the whole investigation is proceeding, it would seem that they're kind of lukewarm, to again resort to extra constitutional means to unseat a legitimate president with the vice president. We've done this twice already, also for the same reason of abuse of position and corruption, but we've never really had any real change. And here comes the Dutertes trying to tell everyone that, hey, they are the ones who are going to bring about change. But we've had the older Duterte already in the previous administration, and here comes this particular mess, still also suggesting that it started during their watch. So in other words, this really is a failure of the whole government. It's a systemic issue, and it's not just limited, could not just be limited to particular individuals. At the very least, I'm inclined to think that while there's command responsibility as far as the incumbent president is concerned, if not for his boldness in declaring to everyone, to the whole country, that there is this huge mess that's ongoing, we would not even have any opportunity to look into all this mess closely.
I want to talk a little bit about one of the groups that's been involved in the protests, and that is the Iglesia ni Cristo, Church of Christ, or INC as it's known. It's a religious group, but they are very politically active, and they got behind Marcos Jr. when he ran for president. Many say that was a big reason why he won, but they've now turned against him in these protests because of these corruption allegations. How much of a factor are they in all of this? They haven't called for his resignation specifically, but they are rallying against his administration. I'll put that to you, Arias Arugay.
Yes, I think the power of the Iglesia ni Cristo, or INC, stems from their very coherent and consistent ability to mobilize. And this has something to do with the coherence of the church and the very strict implementation of protocols by its leadership. While they remain the minority, very small minority compared to other religious affiliations like Catholics and other Protestant denominations, one cannot discount that they steadily built their political power by being able to deliver votes for specific candidates. Of course, they will not admit this, but one can only observe the long queues of politicians that would line up and get to the church's leadership to ask for this endorsement. So far, I think the INC has remained a bit more conservative rather than radical in terms of its demands, with very few exceptions, like allowing the sister of the president to make those remarks about the president's alleged drug use. The discipline of the messaging remains clear that they are for accountability, but let's remember that this church endorsed not only Marcos Jr., but Sara Duterte as well. So in terms of accountability, I think the two other guests mentioned the systemic nature of this. There's also something to do with accountability of the electorate in being able to choose the right leaders, because this corruption scandal would not have been made possible if Filipinos were voting in accordance to proper, appropriate, and correct leadership rather than political dynasties.
Paolo Tomasi, how do you see this playing out then? I mean, Marcos Jr. has until 2028 until his presidency ends. They're only allowed one term. If the longer it goes on, if it doesn't sink his presidency, it's certainly going to taint his legacy, isn't it?
Definitely. If you look at the main opposition against Marcos when he ran in 2022, one of the things that his opposition always raised was how he would continue the legacy of his father, who is really criticized to be this huge plunderer in the 1970s and 80s. And so President Marcos now, if under our current constitution, would not be able to run for another term. Our presidents have a single 6-year term. And so if he's concerned with legacy building in this lame duck period of his presidency, then he has every incentive to actually try to be the one to solve what we've all agreed with is basically a systemic problem. Of course, that will not happen. That systemic solution doesn't come from a single person. It has to be addressed from a whole of government approach and even from on the side of the electorate. But there are certainly a lot of opportunities on the part of the president to make the investigations a success. So supporting the work of the constitutionally independent ombudsman, providing the courts with the necessary support to handle the thousands of cases that are expected to be filed, keeping up the pressure through an independent commission to investigate this. Many things can be done in the remaining period. The question is whether he would just simply try to ride out the remainder of his term or if he's going to try to build a legacy out of this corruption scandal.
Edmund Tayao, how do you see this playing out then? Is there still a lot of momentum in these protests?
Well, so far, the protests didn't really amount to anything, and the numbers have been consistently dwindling. So I'm inclined to think that there is this fatigue that's already happening, no? And again, if I may emphasize, we've had already 2 instances of extra constitutional initiatives to unseat a president. And I've been emphasizing that this is systemic because even if we say that the people should be choosing better, and in fact they showed that they can choose better in the past, just the recent midterm election, no? We were, most of the surveys before the election suggest that all those previous, worn out actors were about to win the election, no? But by some miracle, no, suddenly they didn't make it. So that's a good indication that people are in fact making the right choice, albeit we can say it's a Johnny-come-lately kind of realization, but it's also because there's not much of a choice. I mean, our system allows just anyone who has money and popularity to run for office. It's kind of, I don't know how unique it is as far as the Philippines is concerned, but in other countries, even if you're a son or daughter or related to a sitting president or a previous president, you still have to go through the same political and party process before you can be nominated and therefore run for office. In this part of the world, once you've earned some name and you have the money and you're bored come morning that you wake up and you can just suddenly decide to run for office because simply you don't have anything to do. And this is the kind of political leaders that we find ourselves having to live with, no? Until such time that we change that kind of arrangement, then we will always have this this kind of problem.
All right, on that, we're going to have to leave it. Thank you to all 3 of you, Paolo Tomasi, Edmund Tayao, and Arias Arugay. Thanks very much for being with us. And thank you for watching. Remember, you can follow us on social media and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Hazem Sika. We'll see you next time.